President Duterte can validly enter into legally binding international verbal agreements with other states for in behalf of the Philippines. As chief architect of the nation's foreign policy, the President can enter into executive agreements with other nations for the execution and implementation of the laws crafted by Congress, as well as treaties entered into by our country. These executive agreements, with due respect, do not require Senate concurrence.
We heard the gentleman very clearly on the arguments that he raised on the issue of the agreement between the President and President Xi Jinping of China. But our first question, Mr. President, is can the gentleman spread into the record exactly what the verbal agreement is between the two presidents? Because other than the media reports, I don't think anyone has a record of what the agreement was.
The basis of my proposition was related to several anecdotal reports that apparently there was a verbal agreement 2016, I'm not exactly sure of the month, wherein the President allowed Chinese entities to fish within the West Philippine Sea. But I don't exactly, Mr. President, since it's an oral agreement, I don't have any records of the product of that salivatic agreement, Mr. President.
So if we do not know exactly the parameters of the oral agreement, how can we say that this is valid under international law, that is valid under our Constitution, when we do not even know the parameters of this agreement? So before we get into a debate, and what exactly are we debating on? I think the basis of the debate, at the very least, should be a definition of the parameters of this agreement. What is the agreement all about? At least we should know, we will have a basis as to whether or not it is consistent with the Constitution, as to whether or not it can be ratified, and whatever. The Senate, as the partner of foreign policy in our structure of government, the partner of the executive, at least will be able to exercise his judgment. The gentleman said this is binding. Question, what are we being bound to if we do not know what the agreement is?
Since this is an oral agreement, we do not know the parameters, we do not know the metes and bounds, we do not know the contents. We rely on the political judgment, good faith decision of the President to fulfill his duty on what is good for the country.
Would the gentleman agree that any agreement, written or otherwise, must conform with the Constitution?
Yes, Mr. President.
Now, having said that, Mr. President, is it not logical that we know what the agreement is all about in order that we can judge as to whether this agreement is consistent with or contrary to the Constitution?
I agree, Mr. President.
If you agree with that, Mr. President, is it not logical that we place on the record officially what is the agreement and the parameters of the agreement between the two heads of state in 2015 or 2016? Is it not incumbent?
Mr. President, I do not have in my possession the content of the alleged verbal agreement